Satgurubhyo Namaha. Pranams to a Mahayogi. Can I call you that, sir? Atreya ji. I have known him personally for a short time now, but it looks like I have really known him for ages, because he touches upon a very deep chord in all of us. The fact that he's so approachable, so accessible, so humble, and yet the moment he starts writing, you come to know that he is an encyclopedia. As ma'am rightly said, a beautiful combination of the West with most traditional Indian roots. His words inspire thousands who have been following him, and I am lucky to be in the thread email that he sends, where people keep on asking him so many questions, so many suggestions, sir. And not once has sir ever replied that I am busy, which he is always. He has time for everyone. And a karma yogi is one who always has time for everyone whenever there is actual need. Today, we have him here. We are fortunate to get him here to talk about Dharma, karma, the need of the hour. Thank you, Athrey ji. Looking forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you. This is working, so I'll take that. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be here, and I am amply rewarded. The quality of this audience makes up for the quantity. But I have promised Sri Lakshmi that at some point in the future, I'll be glad to address an audience in the auditorium, which I believe is 180 seats, very hard to fill. I think in the busy modern world, institutions like BIC take great trouble to organize very good events, and they get speakers. The hardest part is to get the audience. But I think even a smaller audience of this level of intellect and experience, so many of you whom I have met earlier, I'm sure that each of you will be an ambassador, a carrier, and share this with wider audiences. You can get a copy of my PowerPoint. I don't myself need to cover any intellectual property. I have no claims on this. So you can use it freely wherever, with whatever audience, in schools, colleges. And I hope some of you will also be guest speakers. Take the effort to be adjunct faculty in various places and share this, because our curriculum is very strong on the technical side and deficient on the values side. So this needs to be corrected, and I think one person cannot do it, lots of you together. I'd like to first of all thank Sri Lakshmi Guru Raja, who, some of you who know her will know that she's a hard taskmaster. Many years ago, she told me to let her know next when I'm in Bangalore, so that a talk can be arranged. And I have been in Bangalore several times, couldn't let her know because the notice was not enough. My client or any other organization for whom I came, this time fortunately it was a family event, a wedding in the family, so I knew about it 6 months ago, and I interrupted her tour in Turkey to let her know that I'm coming here, and she immediately got in touch with people here, organized it. I would also like to thank Dr. Padmaja very much, who is a combination of dance and philosophy. And we have seen her performances through dance expressing philosophical insights. And she's just back today from Mamallapuram in Tamil Nadu, where a 3-day festival of Kala has been organized by the SNA, Sangeet Natak Academy, curated by Dr. Padmaja Suresh, the dancer, with performers from all over the country. And there you spoke on metaphysics and dance, Natya and yoga. And some of you who read the Hindu may have seen articles by her on the Friday Review. I think she writes once a month on a Friday Review piece. So when Sri Lakshmi contacted me, lately I am talking on 3 or 4 subjects. to audiences around the country. Some of those will figure in this presentation. The topic I speak primarily to youth audiences worldwide is about, till last year I was calling it climate change, but as you may have seen in the Oxford Dictionary, this year the terminology has changed. It is no longer called climate change, that is too feeble. It is now called the climate crisis. The latest is, in fact, that has been replaced. The European Union, 3 days ago, has officially declared the President of the European Union, the new ex-German defense minister, Ursula, who has been elected as the President of EU, has declared a crisis emergency. In India, we have an emergency on our hands. Sea water levels are rising. There is already a category of people called climate refugees. So one subject I talk about is climate change. Not on what government should do, which it is doing. Indian government is one of the foremost in meeting the Paris commitments, solar energy, renewable pressure. But I think we need to do at individual, community, organization level. The second subject I talk about is unemployment and the youth, which is a big challenge for us. Many of you must have heard the phrase, the youth dividend in danger of becoming a demographic disaster. If they are not fully educated and in jobs, that could lead to crime, various kinds of, including depression among young people, which is one of the rising causes of death according to WHO statistics. The third issue I talk about is the Chinese challenge. India has to wake up. We have not yet woken up. 5 times our GDP. In 1960, we were ahead of the Chinese GDP. They are now 5 times Indian. Their power in exports, in technology, in military hardware, they are a challenge to the US. They don't even talk about India now. Weak neighbors tempt aggression in strong neighbors. So we have a responsibility to protect ourselves and also to protect Asian peace by becoming more productive, more disciplined about everything else, becoming good karma yogis, perform our karma very well. So the Indian potential is very high, delivery is low. And the last subject I talk about, which is the one I have chosen here, the more senior the audience, I talk about Dharma. And you are not to listen, but your role in providing leadership for Dharma in your own respective areas of influence and widen those areas of influence. So this is the topic. Let me briefly explain this. I think our generation, our challenge is to re-establish Dharma. There was Dharma in this country. There is Dharma everywhere in the world. Dharma is the only thing that can survive. So in the 20th century, in the 1930s, Europe went through a very damaging experience of adharma with the rise of Germany, the Holocaust, the World War. Then after that, we were going for peace. 1989, there was a great hope. At the end of the Soviet Union, the perestroika, glasnost that was initiated there, we thought we will go into peace, but 21st century is threatening with more wars and violence and damage. So we have to keep on re-establishing Dharma. It is not one time, it is not permanent. So there will always be challenges to Dharma, because in the human breast, there is Sattva Guna as well as Rajoguna. There will always be people who will take advantage of a population which takes Dharma for granted by carrying out enough adharma to challenge it. So that is why our permanent karma, not a one-time karma, repeated cycles of it, to keep on re-establishing Dharma, which will be destabilized by negative forces. And this has to happen at 2 levels. This audience probably consists of some ex-civil servants, and all of us are interested in politics. We participate in elections. In the last 5-6 years, politics has become very interesting, very heated in the country. Assembly elections, national elections, local elections, and in management. The business managements around the world have grown technology, built brands, consumer products, retail, a great deal of consumption they've brought about, but they've also severely damaged the environment. So they need to be corrected. Therefore, we have now global forces talking about responsible investment and also bringing in responsibility in management. Yeah. Hello. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's simplest understanding for us Indians about Dharma. The Bhagavad Gita. If there is one book you read about Indian culture and civilization, this is the Gita. Not only for Hindus, but for anybody. It has been celebrated in 300 translations around the world in different languages. So that's my talk here at the BIC. I would like to acknowledge and thank BIC for this opportunity. These are contents. In most of my presentations, I follow what is called the 5-slide rule. PowerPoints get too long, and only keep 5 slides and not more than 3 to 5 bullets on each slide. And I want to give you maximum time for your questions, doubts, counter arguments. Please keep in your own mind turning over anything that you want to ask. Every question is relevant. So we are in the Upanishadic mode, tena prashnena pariprashnena cha, by question and counter question. So I'm not an authority, I'm not infallible, and in every audience I find someone who has a greater knowledge on some aspect or the other of what I'm talking. So please feel free to express your views. You can be as critical as you like. I will improve my next presentation on that basis. So I have these 6 slides here. I've just broken the 5-slide rule. I want to stress that in the long run, for all civilizations and for mankind as a whole, the only viable, sustainable path is Dharma. That does not mean that we will stay in it. Human beings are subject to various temptations. We will keep on deviating from it. But if we have this core concept in us, it will bring us back to the path. Sometimes the path back will be easy. Sometimes it will be difficult. There are always threats to Dharma. Nothing is guaranteed. Dharma will not be forever. No external force, no God, no avatar will keep it going for us. It has to be action by human beings, concerned human beings, especially those of us who are privileged. We are part of the elite. We have had the good fortune of being born to the right families, in the right addresses, right schools and colleges. So we owe a lot back to society, whatever time is left with us. So there are these threats to Dharma. And in relation to the current threats, we are not talking about a standard set of threats, but in the context of 21st century, as of 2019, what are the current threats visible on the screen for us? We have to reestablish Dharma. People are intelligent. Our forefathers who drafted the Indian Constitution, after a lot of debate, chose universal adult suffrage. Today we take it for granted. Some of you who are of my age will remember the debate in the 1950s between a qualification for voting, such as minimum class 12 or bachelor's degree, the models of guided democracy in Indonesia and basic democracy in Pakistan. At that time, Nehru and many others there went ahead and gave universal adult suffrage, anyone the age of 21. I personally agree with that, because the common people may not be educated, but they are intelligent, they are wise. And the election results prove continuously they can throw out any government at any time. And you might have seen recently an article in the Mint newspaper which shows the BJP map as it was 11 months ago and as it is now. It has shrunk. 4 states have gone out of the 11 states that they had. Nobody is all powerful. So the people are looking for good governance. I think in the last 5 years, we've got used to 2 phrases. Far beyond, some of you may remember Atal Bihari Vajpayee's campaign slogan in 1995. First it was Roti Kapda Makan, then it became Bijli Sadak Pani. Now that is not enough. Now it is cell phone, internet and social media. That's what people are looking for, stability. What a noise people are making about Kashmir not having social media for a few months. So I've just added the word national. So at a national level, there must be good national governance, and at the company level, good corporate governance. In fact, there has been much more work on the good corporate governance, not on national governance. Then I'd like to end with the last slide, our permanent karma. And if I may be impertinent enough to suggest, your action plan after today's presentation. I have done my action in making this presentation, but then you take it forward, or any audience, and this is a positive infection. Please infect as many people as possible with it. So we are a country who grow up with these concepts from the grandmother's knees, karma and dharma. I think we understand the word dharma better. On karma, there are many misunderstandings. The Buddhist philosophy, many others have gradually only focused on dharma, karma as that the result of our actions in previous births and so on. But I think karma is much more dynamic. It's futuristic as well. Yes, it is one part, the debt of past actions. If we have done more good karma, very logically, we have a better reputation. We inspire more trust in people. We get more cooperation. Those startups who are trustworthy will have a higher valuation, will get more seed capital. It is very clear. But we also carry in our genes, in our parentage, some scars, some effect of past karma. That's why we are born in particular areas of better or worse opportunity. If we have some belief in divinity, I think our philosophy of Dharma accommodates all kinds of people, from deep believers to atheists as well. It accommodates agnostics. You have Dvaita, Advaita, Visishtadvaita. All philosophies are available to us. But Einstein and scientists have said that there is one final question which logic cannot answer. After you discover all about space and galaxies and black holes and so on, why all this? Who is behind all this? How did this come about? That fundamental origin question cannot be resolved by logic. So if you have the imagination, it doesn't have to be an anthropomorphic, idol kind of worship. There is some divinity around this world, otherwise it will not go on. We are interfering with a divinity. We have seriously damaged the earth. We are leaving behind our children and grandchildren a much worse planet than we inherited from our parents. So I think we are all complicit in the current climate crisis. Dharma is the path that we have to follow to do this divine action, to compensate for past misdeeds. And finally, it is not what you are born into, whatever family background. Every sinner has a future, every saint has a past. We know that common statement, but how you use your life. So I'd like to emphasize what our philosophy says: to be born as a human being is a great boon. Most often our behavior does not show much distinction between the animal society behavior and human behavior. We may be operating at a subhuman, not human level. Many people ask me when I talk about Dharma, Dr. Athrey, do you want us to be superhuman? No, I just want to come up from subhuman to human level. Superhuman is something different, even more, taking universal responsibility, not waiting for others to act, not blaming anyone. That's the kind of thing that Aurobindo Ghosh talks about, Dalai Lama talks about. No, I think even without that, at an earlier level of responsibility. Some of you may know, are there Sanskrit scholars in the audience? With a show of hands? Okay. One very well-known definition of Dharma is Dharayati iti Dharma. Dharma is the only one with which world will survive, a country will survive. For example, China is going through a major challenge in Hong Kong right now. How are they going to deal with it? The US House has been courageous enough to pass a resolution condemning violence in Hong Kong and supporting. But global public opinion is generally in favor of Hong Kong and democracy. So for Xi Jinping and his colleagues, there is a big challenge whether they will uphold Dharma. At an organizational level, we have seen histories. One of the pharmaceutical firms where the father founded it, and I was a consultant to them for 10 years on their vision, mission, strategy, globalization. The company grew very well. Market capitalization went up. Many shareholders benefited. That company has been sold to a Japanese firm. It is closed down. The promoters are in prison. So even in the corporate world, it is very clear that unless you follow Dharma, the institution will not survive. Today, in a deregulated competitive environment, survival has become the first objective. Then comes profits, growth, and reputation in the society. Our Shastras keep on teaching us this lesson that Ravana, Duryodhana, many cases where if you do not protect Dharma, you will not be protected. So protect Dharma, Dharmo rakshate rakshitaha. If it is protected, it will protect us and society together. And Dharma has many levels. Some of you may have read Arthashastra and Dharma Shastra. It talks about, I have used Sanskrit words, many of us are, Bangalore city especially, is not so anti-Hindi as some other parts of the country. Vyakti is individual Dharma. Every citizen, we have a Dharma. And at the moment, if you look at just one campaign, first use plastics being given up, it is a challenge to every citizen, every consumer. How many of us take a bag, a cloth bag to the shop and refuse plastic bags? How many of us keep one ready when the vegetable vendor comes? It's fantastic. Life in Delhi is so comfortable. NRIs who visit us are feeling very nostalgic. I wish I were in India. Delhi, so many beautiful vegetables are coming. Even those chaps carry plastic bags. And our cook has a strict instruction that she must carry her own bag and take these and not bring these in. The milk delivery, it comes in a packet. And we now, at 5:30 a.m., I'm up at 5 every morning. I keep a bag in the front gate, and he drops those 3 packets. I take them in, no plastic bag. So this is a Vyakti Dharma. Then there is a Sangatana Dharma, organizations, whether profit or non-profit organizations. Each one of them have a Dharma to perform. And then there is Rashtra Dharma. For example, the US is failing to perform its Dharma when President Trump says we will not follow the Paris Agreement. It's a height of a Dharma for a rich society. In fact, they should do more than Paris Agreement. They should give funding, green funding. They should give technology to poorer countries to fight their climate battle. On the other hand, Macron, France, Germany, India, China, we are taking our responsibility. And there is a Vishwa Dharma. There has to be a global Dharma which will avoid inter-country hatred, going for misrepresentation and preventing wars around South China Sea, in the Middle East. So there are flashpoints where the Third World War can begin. And this Dharma is essential if the world is to achieve SDG. I hope you don't mind I'm not testing the audience. I would like some of the younger audience to mention what is SDG. Have you heard about it? What does it mean? Yeah, आपसे नहीं, आपसे भी younger लोग बैठे हैं इधर. This young lady there in that corner, for example. No? Yeah, I want them to burst out with the answer. SDG should be in their fingertips. Wake them up at 3 in the morning. They need it more than we do. We are a passing generation. Yeah, this will be very serious for them. It follows MDG. What were MDG? I'm asking questions just to keep us alive. Millennium Development Goals. Yeah? They are over. Now we have the SDG. How many SDGs are there? I have not finished with my questions. 17. Yeah? Okay. These are very critical. And without Dharma, of all levels, Vyakti to Vishwa, we will not achieve these goals. For example, for corporate people like my friend Sushil Haksa, let me mention here, one of the 2030 goals is 50-50 by 2030. A beautiful arithmetical statement. 50-50 by 2030. What does that mean? Have we read about it? What does it signify? Do you remember a newspaper article, a television program? We see lots of Netflix, and the Queen is fascinating. Yeah, we may see repeats of it. Yeah, 50-50 is a fantastic challenge. Every corporate boardroom to consist of 50% women directors. The only country which is anywhere near close to is Norway. They are already at 40. They will achieve 50 by 2025. What is the Indian target now? 1 woman director, at least in the board. So what is happening? Some family lady member will be on that board. What does she contribute? We don't know in terms of corporate governance. So I think there are very challenging goals there for us to get to. The girls and their education, their equality and opportunity. I think it is in that context that we should see bills like Triple Talaq, how it will free up millions of women who can, at least some of whom will begin participating. Dharma, sometimes the world is very stable. I think I was fortunate to be born in the 1940s. 1950, at the end of the World War 46, 1950 to 1989, in my view, was a golden period. I was in the US in the 60s, which was fantastic. There was no problem of petrol cars, driving long distances, go on a weekend to International Pancake House for a breakfast, drive long distances. 1972, the oil crisis. The crude price going quadruple, 4 times, began some noise. And by 1992, first Rio World Conference, environmental conference, the problem was hitting the world. So today we have a climate crisis, climate emergency. We have rising inequality and unemployment. Some of you may have read the book or a review of a scholar called Thomas Piketty. What is the title of that book? It was a international bestseller. There were reviews in every newspaper, magazine around the world. Capital in the 21st century. Thomas Piketty, a French economics professor. His main conclusion was, in the last 100, 200 years, the return on capital has been higher than the rise of wages. This is continuing. If you look at the Indian balance sheets, the ratio between the lowest paid and the highest paid is 200 plus now. Arthashastra recommends 1:6. And for a long time, we had 1:6 in the public sector. So this is 1:100 plus is what is creating this inequality and unemployment. And we have this advantage of youth for 10 more years. If we don't skill them and employ them, they become a liability, they become untrainable. Many of you may remember I have said in many conferences that untrained manager is not a problem. The untrainable manager is a very serious problem. Yeah. Then terrorism is rising. The IS is not finished. It may be reborn in some form or the other. The danger of wars, I mentioned the flashpoint, South China Sea, Middle East, and so on. And now Latin America has some places where civil wars are taking place. They can spill over. And uncontrolled new technologies. The two great people, recent technology people, were worried about them, about robotics, artificial intelligence, two big, one scientist and one entrepreneur, who are very concerned. Who are they? Do you remember their? Elon Musk is one, very worried about robotics and its impact. Stephen Hawking, yeah, the great space scientist. What was his advice? He said, it is already too late. You have damaged the earth, go for space travel and colonization. He is hopeless about humanity surviving on the planet. So he has a dystopian view. On the other hand, there are many people who are utopian, that technology will solve every problem. We have to watch it. And one of the problems why I say uncontrolled, the regulatory agencies do not have enough expertise. Industry is moving faster on the technology than the regulator to catch up. Okay, that's, in fact, Gita was remarking as we drive around Bangalore, on the one side there is beautiful, these glass buildings, housing IT and pharma and so on, big stores, spa everywhere, and lots of rubbish around the roads, uncollected, filth, major danger to public health. This you can see all over Bangalore, or in every other city. Climate is in crisis. Amazon forest burning. Fires closing into Sydney. Northern California, fires everywhere. So these are frequent. Melting of the glaciers. Sea levels rising. I think cities like Bhubaneswar, Calcutta, Bombay may sink at some point of time unless a lot of action is taken. Inequality, happily. I mentioned Piketty. Piketty's next book has come out in French this year. It has been reviewed. The English translation will come out next year. It is talking about end of billionaires. He is talking about the need to eradicate by heavy taxation billionaires, dollar billionaires. Only then we can deal with the inequality problem. Some of you may have heard about UBI, Universal Basic Income. Well informed, give him a hand. Yeah, we have now come to a stage where we feel technology will displace so many people that we should take their profits and taxes and give every family a guaranteed income. What was the Congress Party manifesto promise in the 2019 election? An idea that they 70,000, 6,000 per month, 72,000. Raghuram Rajan's advice to them. Abhijit Banerjee, the latest Nobel laureate in economics. So people are now talking about guaranteeing basic income so that this inequality will come down. Queues. For every railway job, how many applications are there? A few lakhs in this country. And the guy finally pays some money and gets a job. Terrorism of various kinds. Not only religious, but economic terrorism, political. That means Dharma is breaking down to some extent, but we don't have to be pessimistic. Democracy is a slow but a sure form of governance. The Chinese kind of capitalist market plus party talent development is working reasonably well. The worst, as Kautilya warned us many years ago, anarchy is the worst. Anything else is better. Once you have anarchy, for example, if in India we had lots of these local battles to re-establish the Indian state, the Indian Union, and the constitution will be very difficult. I think we must preserve and cherish the unity we have now. We should have debate and so on, but no question of secession, no question of independence, no Nagaland, no Khalistan, no independent Kashmir, no way. And the DMK has dropped that demand in Tamil Nadu, sensibly. And now we are talking about cyber warfare. One of the great worries of scientists who know about cyber technology is that there are weapons which will automatically make their own decisions on the battlefield. You cannot even control them once you have launched them. And so the extermination, the Holocaust of Germany will look like a tea party when some of these weapons go out into the field. Yeah. So we were there evolving as human beings, and today there is one forecast that there may be a world in the 21st century where it will be a population no longer of humans, robots which themselves reproduce more robots. That is the population. Yeah? Okay, so these are problems. The climate crisis, unemployment, inequality, they are problems. They are not the threats to Dharma. Threats to Dharma are human threats. And there are three threats according to our Shastras, and we can see it happening. That good people don't act in time, the last point. The scarcity of sattvic, wise individuals who know the problem, who know the solution, are inactive, not sufficiently active. They must bestir themselves, get out, and take charge. The most active people are rajasic, highly energetic, ambitious, aggressive. We want that energy, we want that drive, but it has to be channelized into more constructive, productive. So the sattvic leadership is necessary to do this. So the least we want are tamasic individuals, and some people slide into hopelessness, despair, suicide. The rate of suicide is rising in India. Farmer suicide, youth suicide. It is very high in the US. The life expectancy is coming down actually in the US and beginning to do so in Europe as well. It has hit a peak of 78 and it's coming down. Why? The opioid crisis. Yeah, first for pain killing and then for continuous kick. Yeah. And it is dropping heavily in the US population among the poor whites and among the African Americans. At the moment, the immigrants from Asia, because of their cultural background, are studying and doing well, but their children, grandchildren could slide into it. It's beginning to happen. The Latinos also may approach in that direction. So I think my appeal is for every Sattvic person to not just, I think Nehru made this point very well in his autobiography. One of the weaknesses of Hindu religion is that Sattvic people work for their own personal liberation, moksha, and do not do enough for society. And we now must do both, personal spiritual enlightenment as well as action at a Sattvic level. So we have to reestablish Dharma. That means we must be willing to engage in action, in conflict, in war, but not any kind of war, Dharma Yudh. And I think you are perfectly legitimate and entitled. It is your duty to fight fair battles, battles for ethics, values, saving society. We cannot run away. That is what the talented Arjuna wanted to do in chapter 1. And the great contribution and lesson that Krishna gave was, no, you cannot run away. This is your duty. You have to do it, not because you will enjoy the results, but because you have to do it for the society. You cannot let Duryodhan take over governance in permanence. So some of you may know the Gita shloka, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya dushkritam sambhavami yuge yuge dharma samsthapanarthaya. So here God is giving it, but I think in the 21st century we cannot wait for God. There is divinity in each one of us. We are the Krishnas, we are the Arjunas. We have to take some action, and this has to be percolated to the next 2 generations. So how do we re-establish Dharma? I put the highest responsibility on the most fortunate elite of society. In the remaining years of their life, they should be more active. In fact, they should be working harder than before retirement. What do you need? How much, by reported newspaper, I'm not glorifying anyone's personality. Frequently reports come up, how much does our Prime Minister sleep on an average per day? 4 hours. And there were dramatic instances where he flew back from Latin America, on the flight rested. Next morning he was in Delhi, and the evening he was in Ranchi, and the third day he was in Goa or somewhere. So I think we have to work. This is a climate crisis. It's an emergency. It's a youth problem. So much more active leaders. And I think if we have been karmacharis for 40, 50 years. What's a karmachari? He may be chairman, he may be vice chairman, director, I don't care. But everybody from the chaprasi to the chairman is a karmachari. What do? They work because at the end of the month there will be a paycheck. At the end of the year there will be more stock options and bonuses. That's what we are working for. But I think after retirement you can really work for the good of society, and the energy it gives you is tremendous. No stress, no fatigue, joy, pure joy in the good work that one is doing. And then we also have to protect the good people and the paritranaya sadhunam, the victims of climate change, the victims of inequality. We have to help them and not allow the strong to prevent us, to restrain the wicked. And we should help the rajasic people. I think we need highly talented engineers, managers, architects, doctors, and so on. But some of you may have read one whole issue of India Today last year was devoted to the disastrous state of medical ethics. Yeah, the number of cesarean operations in India is far too high, completely unnecessary. The hospital admission, drips, surgery, the insurance spoils it. They pay for you, and therefore you irresponsibly stay, and not enough on what Ayurveda stresses, good health and prevention of illness. And we have to awaken the tamasic from. I think this the Chinese party has done, not that we can now follow their method, the Cultural Revolution. Some of you may have been in China, I've been there several times. The Chinese talk about the lost decade, 1966 to 1976, Mao's period. He completely tore apart the industry, university system, sent professors into farms, but that was necessary. It was a shake-up of Chinese culture. Their understanding, now they can dream. What are the key components of Xi Jinping's The China Dream? It's a great document, threatening document. very worrying for a neighbor like India. I mean, we cannot complain to God. We have two neighbors who pose all kinds of problems for us on the west and the east. But Xi Jinping's vision of China is frightening. China to be re-established as the greatest civilization and country in the world, which they were at some point of time. The BRI around the world, encircling various countries, reaching into Europe, splitting Europe on the Huawei technology issue. Okay. Now, normally, this is something we are aware of, what we expect, that good democracy and national governance should be participatory and all the other things. Equitable and exclusive. These words you will find in our constitution. One of the most beautiful documents in the world, probably the best constitution ever written. The sections taken from the US, from Russian constitution, from French liberation, various ideas there. So we have it all on paper. But it will come. What are the conditions for good national governance? We should have political parties which are professional. There's only one party which is professional in the country. That is one of the reasons why it may be winning. And even after losing, it may keep coming back. There must be internal ethics in the party and elections. I think we have a whole lot of national and regional family-based parties. Just now, Bombay. Why was this mandate to an alliance given up, and a very funny kind of unlikely coalition put together so that the father may become CM, and in 2 years' time he will make his son at the age of 23 CM of our largest industrial state in the country. I mean, this is not good governance. So some of the Maharashtra IAS officers may seek transfer to the center or to some other project and so on. We have built from 1950s, to the credit of our earlier prime ministers, excellent institutions. I've used for some alphabets for ease of space: legislature, executive, judiciary, civil service, armed forces, media. And we have some of the best in the world. Anybody from the military, retired general, admiral here in this group? I think our armed forces have been exceptional in this developing country, in this region, never interfering in politics. We could count on that. We can still, not like Pakistan or China. The PLA is still the strong force there. The Chinese president has to be also commander of the forces to stay in power. We have to strengthen I think our regulatory agencies have also improved. Those of you who knew the capital markets in the 70s and 80s will see the difference that SEBI has made, the Reserve Bank has made, the Competition Commission of India has made now, and now we have the IBC, insolvency and bankruptcy. Whole lot of new institutions are being built, and they are learning, and they are performing better and better. And there should be less political interference. There should be less biased press and less monopoly in our industry. For example, the telecom sector, where I did the initial reform report, which is fundamental reform, breaking away from very slow, inefficient government monopoly into a dynamic sector. 500 million cell phones, the world's largest cell market and cell users. Now the industry is threatening to be two players, one player, monopoly, duopoly coming in. So those have to be prevented by these agencies. So there is need for a healthy triangle. The most active force should be civil society. That means leadership, social actors, Dharma. Civil society must demand and control the other two parts of this triangle. The market must be regulated. I was in a meeting on 29th November in Delhi, jury of the Institute of Company Secretaries, on giving awards for excellence in corporate governance, excellence in social responsibility, and lifetime achievement award for chairman who have run the best companies in the country. And the debate was very interesting. Vedanta was in the short list of 5. There was a very serious debate, and the jury threw it out. And I'm sorry to say, Sushil, the ITC was in the list, and there was a divided opinion. There were jury members who highly praised the company for having now diversified so that non-tobacco revenues are 50% or more, and this should be rewarded. There was the other group who said, no, Still 50% is tobacco, 80% of the profits is from tobacco. They will go into vaping, new cigarettes and so on. So that got thrown out. And finally, they went for a clean industry without pollution, and the reward will be announced. I won't mention the company now, but the civil society must convey its views and preferences through consumers and so on market insurance malpractices. And we have the institutions now, consumer complaints, redressal, and so on. And the elected government and opposition should not be wasting parliament time, but use it for really highly informed debates in education. And so the last parliament was highly productive. 90% of legislation was passed. And the Article 370 resolution was passed by 85% of the parliament votes. And we need to get that kind of convergence. Good corporate governance, the various management is terrific for jargon. Lots of concepts, ideas, words, new one. And I'm intimately familiar with this. What a long way we have come from my PhD in '67 to the management language that we are using today. And it is creeping into other parts of society. For example, the medical profession uses management of various kinds of the pain management and post-operative care management. Everywhere the word management is coming. It is a neutral world. It is not connected to capitalism. So here, good corporate governance depends on, recently, in the US, the Business Roundtable in Washington, D.C. 100 largest corporations are member. They have, for the first time, made a historic decision. Are you familiar? Some of you may have read about it. It was in the papers. They have dropped profit as the primary goal of business, in principle, and at least said that there must be a corporate purpose. Profit may be incidental. It is a reward for efficiency, cost control, but the business must have a purpose. What is the purpose of the product or technology? How does it increase the total quality of life of society, or does it damage? And therefore, the Sackler family, many museums have closed the sections, and nobody is accepting the donations anymore because of the opioid manufactured by that company. So there must be a noble corporate purpose. They should earn, in our Purushartha, the 4 life goals, something we don't notice, but it's very important that you will see any Shastra, any Purana, any Katha, the first objective is always, without any change, Dharma. Dharmartha kama moksha. Take any text you will find, number 1 is always Dharma. It says that earn your artha, sales and profits, only through dharmic means. So it has to be action from within the company, as well as regulatory, criminal, preventive action, and action by consumer groups and so on. So external control is necessary. Not all will fall in line, but corporate governance is an appeal to the values of the chairman, the board, voluntarily to establish Dharma. And then the profit earned must be spent only for dharmic needs. So recently, the WeWork, a new sensational IPO in the West, collapsed. And there is a news report in the FT, Financial Times, that the day after the collapse, the top managers had a fabulous party somewhere, an expensive party. And there has to be an immediate cutoff on that. And what do we do to employees who will be retrenched, shareholders who will lose money on this? Karma, Hindu philosophy is not otherworldly. It does not deny this life. It accepts that there is need for karma. The West has a very narrow interpretation of karma because of Kama Sutra. Karma is a wider word which is for your desire for comfort, happiness, consumption, display, and also sex is one of the several aspects of karma. But there is a beautiful statement in the Gita where it says, Dharma aviruddha kaman, that those desires which are not against dharma, you may follow. For example, film world, Bollywood, newspapers also trigger this just for more sale. They almost seem to encourage affairs outside of marriage. All this is great reading, and I tell every audience until it happens to you. Then it's very painful, extremely painful for both partners, especially the one who is left behind. That is why our ancients, and I think in the West also, the divorce rate is dropping and marriages are surviving more. that an institutionalized system of marriage where your sex drive is transmuted and your energy is available. That is why there is global interest now in Kundalini Yoga, the chakras, taking the energy from the basest food and sex level of energy preoccupation into higher, the Sahasrara chakra of intellect and wisdom. And then we should also demonstrate. So in 1998, I delivered a convocation address at the Institute of Management in Goa, in Manipal Institute of Management. And my theme was PSR. The theme of the address was PSR. Can you figure out an analogy to CSR? Personal social responsibility. Don't hide behind what your company is doing. That they are doing out of their profits. Now it is law. 2% has to be done anyway. What the hell are you doing in your capacity? The money that you're earning, the bonuses you are getting, the consumption you're engaging in your community, all the knowledge that you have. So Jayaprakash Narayan talked about several kinds of dhan that we can do. That not only sampati dhan, but samay dhan, gyan dhan, the skill training and development. And there are some beautiful stories. How many of you read the Better India site? Yeah? Lots of good stories. Every time it's coming up, things are happening. We have to escalate them, multiply them. These have to take a Vishwarupa for a country of 1.3 billion people. Yeah. And so there must be personal dhan. So I've been suggesting everywhere that at least set aside 2% of your post-tax income. First create a budget. And you will find that for 10 months you have not done much. And you run and do something in the remaining 2 months. And if you are very well off, and the children have grown up, raise it to 5. And what percentage of his wealth Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have promised to give to philanthropy? 50% minimum. Bill Gates has said 90. So the philanthropy club is 50 is the basic, and you can increase it beyond that. So this is my last slide, our permanent karma, not for 1 week, not for 1 month, as long as we're alive. And karma to be handed over to our next generation. So we have to support the pro-dharma forces in organizations, communities. I think in the adharma-dharma battle, most of the time it is the Ravans who almost win, Duryodhans who are almost winning. But dharma is inexorable. It will come back. We have to help it. So India as a nation must speak up, and it is doing in international fora for what is right, anti-terrorism, climate control, green technologies, technology support, and we should keep doing that within the organization. So tell your highly qualified children the Indian talent which is going abroad. I address some of the NRI audiences. I appreciate them for their high level of education, skill, and contribution. I ask them one simple question. What are you doing for India? You are contributing a great deal of stuff to the GDP of the US, the EU, fantastic. But what's your country of birth getting? And the trend is that for a few years there are remittances, and the parents die and these stop. Money earned there, money spent there, and the next generation has no knowledge of India, no concern for India. It's gone. The capital is gone. So many students come to me for recommendation letters last 30, 40 years. I put them only one condition. I'll write a beautiful letter for you. You deserve it. But you give me a promise that 3 years for education, 2 years for experience, and you will come back. Then I will send this letter. At least I take a promise. They may break it, but the conscience should continue to prick them. Now there is some return of talent. The self-employment, investment opportunities. So we have to not only oppose, but I think the ideal thing is to convert the energy of adharmic forces into dharma, if we can turn them around. We have to uphold the order. For example, this institution of BIC is not exempt from dharma battles at some point of time. Terry has gone through one. Leadership dominance and misbehavior, and the board condoning it, board divided on that issue. This can happen in any organism, so we cannot be complacent. Eternal vigilance on dharma to prevent destabilization. The earlier we act on adharma, the more successful we will be. If we let it grow, the energy taken to combat it would obviously higher. And yes, dharma will keep declining. We'll have to keep restoring dharma for a long time. So that's what I had to say, and I now, am I all right, moderator, on time? Okay. Yeah. I will let her take charge. Yeah. Okay. No, that looks like a... It looks like a wedding where the couple...
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chatushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Thank you so much, sir, for reminding us of the Bhagavad Gita. I also want to thank Gita ma'am here. Yes, Gita ji. It is very evident from what sir presented that there's a great deal of harmony, first and foremost, in the Kutumbakam.
Some Dharma Yuddham also, but overall.
The word university lies in a family is a very famous proverb. But today the most challenging thing that we have is, do we still have the famous family model in India? Sir, you said that in your grandma's lap you heard these sayings. So today, do we have that comfort of a grandmother's lap? Do the children get the grandmothers and the granddads in their own homes? Do the mothers, a woman is supposed to be the backbone of the family. But what we have today is we go to a function as well. People are all sitting and looking at their phone. Hello, how are you? Namaskaram, Hari Om. How was your day yesterday? Where is so-and-so? When can we meet? We don't even do that. At the most, there is an emoji or an RIP sometimes. It is so sad we don't even... Today, people don't have time because this is fast. It's a fast-track world. And in the weekend, you just have to get away from all this, escape somewhere. So this is like really running riot. Unfortunately, the point you said, technology, social media, is it working positively? Like this PowerPoint, I think, should be broadcast on a daily basis, repeatedly. Please give sir a very big hand for that. We see so many things being passed on our phones. And personally, all of us, we should share this and remind ourselves, prepare our youth, the children, because in schools there's no moral science lesson as such anymore. So the first thing is start from the family level. And then take these Vedic, Upanishadic, Shastric knowledge, where you balance the transactional world and the transcendental world, reminding you of your duty on a daily basis. I think that's very important that each one of us get back home and think, yes, I may have this balance. What is the balance I'm leaving after I go? We all have to go. So after that, in my own career, for example, in the dance world, what is it that I'm leaving for the next generation, I ask myself? Just performing on stage, getting something in the newspaper next day in the morning. Today, we don't even have newspaper. It's like social media, which says you have a like and you become immediately an artist of fame. But again, it's for a short while. Nothing seems to be sustaining. The virtual reality world is a very, very big threat. So where is it that we can bring about a change on an individual level, like sir very rightly said? within your area of work, first try to make a difference. Obviously, it will inspire. So this lesson, sir, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart personally, because I feel as a proponent of soft power culture, I shouldn't sit back and relax and say, yes, this is enough, or this is the area I can do work on, which I'm trying. But also look at so many other areas where we need to correct ourselves and see if we can contribute as citizens of the nation, responsible for our Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which India is foremost for that. Thank you so much, sir. Now I leave the floor open to all our esteemed guests here to raise some questions.
We'll share this mic. You may give it to him.
Yes.
He'll pass it to the audience.
Yes.
Yeah. You can hold it to moderate the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Athrey, for a wonderful lecture. While I appreciate all the values which you've talked about and going to Dharma and then, of course, being the permanent karma, I'd like to ask you a question. The question is that each country which you've talked about, for example, China as well as US, have succeeded in many ways. Do they actually have at the core any dharma and guided by the permanent karma?
Yeah. Good question. Let me answer that, and I'll give a...
Actually, it's related to this.
You put a load on the speaker to remember the questions. Sometimes I may forget his question and only answer your question. That's a hazard. So can you do a little meditation and don't forget your question, though. All right. Yeah, this is a very good question. Actually, no civilization, no country can survive without some set of values, culture, philosophy. In the onslaught of the scientific and industrial revolution, what many of them have tended to do in India also, the secularism, the constitution, government had nothing to do with any kind of religion. So I think since the 19th century, there has been an attempt and a pretense to think that all development and growth will take place due to human hard work and an ideology and so on. But if you look deeper, after Deng Xiaoping, after Mao, who was the totally extreme communist, who talked about permanent revolution, who talked about antagonistic contradictions in society and so on, the Deng Xiaoping leadership changed it completely, much more pragmatic. And now China, anybody from the foreign service, has opened a number of Confucius institutes around the world, like the Gita Institute of Germany around the world, teaching German. China is now going back to Confucius, Confucian philosophy, reconciling Confucius and Marxism, current practice. So communism with Chinese characteristics, what does it mean? It means Confucianism plus Chinese market. The only difference is strong party control. China is bribing its citizens, don't ask for democratic freedoms, but we'll guarantee your material quality of life. So China is now back to the roots of Confucian. The Soviet Union broke up in 1989. Christian churches and mosques came up all over Europe. It was as if Christianity and Islam had never vanished. Who is Stalin? Who is he against the force of ideology, religion, philosophy, against the Bible and the Quran? They all came back within 1 year, everywhere in Europe. People went back to the churches, to the mosques, to prayer. Now, it has a good point. It becomes too extreme. But so ex-Soviet Union has rediscovered philosophy. Putin is behind the Orthodox Church. He is against the splitting of the Orthodox Church by Ukraine. Yeah, and the US European, the leading party in Germany, what is the name? Christian Democrats. It's what we call welfare democracy. But because we went through London School of Economics, Harold Lasky, we believe in atheism plus socialism. But Europe believes in Christianity plus socialism. And the US Constitution, US Church, the swearing in is with the Bible of the president. So every country has to come back to the roots of its Swadharma. Otherwise it cannot build a strong, sustainable edifice of industrial growth. Yeah, please, yeah.
And not only there, Swadharma, I think Indian spiritual organizations are also spreading out there. Like in Russia itself, they have some very strong dharmic-based Indian organizations doing their best.
For example, we don't take ISKCON seriously in India. We go and see the temple for its architecture and so on. It's so popular in Europe, in Russia, in Poland, all over. Brahma Kumari's organization, the Shivananda Yoga centers around the world, Iyengar Yoga, the Chinmaya mission, ever you take it, there is a hunger for spirituality in the world. As Gorbachev said, there is a values crisis. And this will increase with technology, robotics, and so on. So we are not alone in Dharma. In fact, we are the country which the finest Dharma and the most insincere practice. So we have to rediscover our authenticity. Yeah, your question.
I think you've touched upon quite a few of the aspects. We seem to be the worst in terms of executing on whatever we have. You know, the democracy, you said it's a good democracy, but it doesn't show itself to be one which is successful. I'm primarily comparing us against China. China, with all its flaws and, you know, communism and all of that stuff, it is far ahead, and we have the best spiritual leaders, we have the best institutions.
Unfortunately, this audience probably does not include some trade union leaders. 1967, I was at IIM Calcutta teaching, and the LIC had ordered IBM 101 computer in 1964, and the crates remained unopened for 10 years because the labor union would not allow it to be opened. I was working in Gaskin-Williams in the factory before I went to the US, and the only way I could get my work done was to become a friend of Johar Ganguly, the union leader of that place. And because of a personal relationship, he allowed some work to go on. So Mr. Krishnamurthy, SAIL chairman, who has done fantastic work with three of our finest enterprises, BHEL, Maruti, and SAIL turnaround, he regretted. We were in a meeting of 27 unions of the company, and very senior leaders, I know them personally, M.K. Pandey, Ganga Singh, and so on. He said the greatest damage that we have done to this country is to destroy the work culture. And poor work culture is not part of Indian philosophy. What is the definition of yoga? One definition, yoga karmasu kaushalam. I have heard from my seniors, my grandparents, my parents, my uncle, that they were very critical of us when we wasted time. They did not accept shoddy work. If you swept or mopped or cleaned vessels or put a rangoli in front of the house, it had to be beautiful, perfect. So they did not tolerate shoddy, poor work. At home, academic studies, you have to be first, you have to be in the top 3, top 5. Continuous pressure from my father died early, my elder sister. So you have to become a role model. The moment you come to the organized workplace, work culture is ruined. We have to rediscover the work culture. It is happening now in the private sector. It is happening in the new startups. And the young fellows are working extremely hard. In that case, we have to worry about the stress and ask them to work a little less. So we have to rediscover the concepts of yogaha samatva uchyate, balance without extreme views, and there has to be a national cooperation between labor, capital, government, civil society. We are capable, we have high potential. India is a permanently, the world is waiting for India to grow, even now. We should have been growing in around 1995, after 4 years after the Narasimha Rao reforms. I was expecting and predicting in many places that our growth rate will hit 10% like China did, and we are capable of growing for 20 years at double-digit growth, which is what we needed to do to control the population by development, as well as the surplus for infrastructure, capital formation, export orientation, and so on. We have failed to do that. Even now, the only way we can survive is to go back to the Bhagavad Gita work culture, that every person to be efficient and conscious. So you work for 3 reasons, for you and your family, your organization, and the nation. The national consciousness has to seep in everywhere. So the Indian IQ is very high, EQ is very low.
Sir, thank you very much for a wonderful, illuminating talk. Now, I don't have a question, but what I want to say is, Amartya Sen talks about the difference between Niti and Nyaya in his book, the idea of justice. Now, we have a whole lot of Niti in our system. Karvi misappropriates funds of investors. You have a rape case happening in Shamshabad yesterday and nothing happens. So we have plenty of Niti and no Nyaya. My question is, how will Dharma come and restore, convert the Niti into Nyaya so that people get justice? Delivered justice is lacking. It's only systems and processes.
I got your question.
Thank you.
I completely understand and share your sense of despair. That is chapter 1 of the Gita, Arjuna Vishada Yoga Nama. I think there are cases of injustice like Karvi, like the Hyderabad incident which has happened with a woman. But to say that there is no Nyaya in this country is not correct. I will just give you the history of the, you have invested some money in mutual funds. You are interested in the Sensex and Nifty numbers as they're going up, reasonable interest. All right. You remember our capital markets in the 1970s and 80s, and what changes Mr. G.V. Ramakrishna made, who was the first chairman of SEBI, and what additional changes that Vajpayee, ex-LIC, made in this, and what improvements are continuing today. It is one of the best stock exchange controlled regimes. So I think if we look at an odd incident, and let me come back to you, sir, and to the rest of the audience. We in India have a predilection, a tendency to look at one negative incident and blow it out of proportion and neglect lots of positive things that are happening because there is an unconscious motive. It absolves us of our social responsibility. That we can continue to blame the system, continue to blame the government. We can continue. What we are encouraging is a sense of hopelessness that in this country nothing will improve. Take, for example, public transport. Sridharan got a Bharat Ratna. Why did he get a Bharat Ratna? The man has changed the face of urban transportation in this country from Delhi Metro. Now, Bangalore Metro will create a crisis for you, traffic jams and so on. It is a nuisance. But when it is done, believe me, anyone who traveled in Calcutta Metro, which is the first metro in this country, the pride of the city, the people, how they take care of it, Delhi Metro and its reach. Look at the lines growing in the last 20 years. What is the reach of Delhi Metro? Now, if you look at health, education, new private universities, the swift way in which the RBI has taken care of, 2 enterprises have gone. The insolvency and balancy, Ruyas have lost control of SR. Chandra has lost control of Z. More is coming on the way. Unless they repay, they're selling their personal stake to repay the loans. So the banks and so on are tightening the discipline. I think the government was highly permissive. When the government itself became corrupt from 1966, from Lal Bahadur Shastri's unfortunate death in Tashkent, that is the date we can put historically, the decline of Nyaya in first government, in the Prime Minister, in the cabinet. Then if I have heard many taxi drivers, auto rickshaw fellows say, अगर प्रधानमंत्री इतना पैसा लेते हैं, इतना करते हैं, हमको क्या करना है, क्या देखना है? हम भी करें, अपने opportunity मौका को use करें. So I think it bad leadership examples. We failed in Shrestha Dharma. Yad yadacharati Shrestha. So the elite has failed. Now I think the last 10 years, or at least since 91, is re-establishing Dharma. That's what I'm talking about. So there are a lot of good things happening. Let us highlight them to our people in every sector. I remember consumer goods, the status of the consumer goods, packaging, product. Now look at the supermarkets, the consumer brands and products, and a new entrant. How many of you use Patanjali toothpaste? I'm disappointed. When I talk to audiences in North India, Eastern India, Gujarat, big switch from multinational toothpaste to Dantakanti, toothpaste. Admissions to colleges and so on, competitive examinations everywhere. So no sifarish. Job recruitment in corporations, online recruitment, data processing. I think everywhere we are trying to bring in more equity. We are too clever as a nation to allow it to progress fast, but the path is towards re-establishment of Dharma, and we have to support it. So there is no one now, from the CII, FICCI, ASOCHAM, no industrialist is speaking for Karvi. No industrialist is supporting the Royas. No industrialist is supporting Naresh Goyal on Jet Airways. I think the Adharma is getting its due phalam. So I think please take a positive view, look at many good things that are happening, and you may take longer to convince. Mr. T.N. Session died recently. What did he do for this country? He put the fear of God into MPs and MLAs, postponed elections. Our election commission is rated in the world as one of the best. People are taking advice. They're inviting the EC to hold elections in other parts of the world. So if you clean up that one system, so many things happen in terms of politics. So I think I see changes in many fields, the increase of equity, but the forces of Adharma will continue. All right, next question. Yeah, I think Dharma also asks us to be optimistic rather than pessimistic. Yeah.
Sir, thank you for the talk. You never mentioned anything about agriculture. I was just watching. You talked a lot about the industry, the consumerism and all. But we are not, as a country, we are not done justice to farmers. The agrarian sector has been addressed not adequately. Basically.
Yeah.
So, almost the 45 to 50% of the population is dependent on the agriculture. Last 4 decades, except for creating some kind of basic infrastructure like storages and roads and all, we did not do much to farmers.
Yeah, your question is clear. Let me take it up. The agriculture sector represents a very interesting problem. It's one of the biggest, what is called Dharma Sankat. Please appreciate this. If you are in a senior position of policy in a company or in government, you will always have 2 or more competing dharmas. And you have to resolve the Dharma Sankat. It is not a Sadharan Sankat, but it is a Dharma Sankat. The government has 2 dharmas to blend. The dharma to the consumer of food grains, vegetables, fruits, agricultural products on the one side, and the dharma to the farmer who is growing these on the other side. Actually, government, if you take the pollution problem in Delhi, burning of agricultural waste, the government has supported water-intensive crops like rice for a long time. And they lead to this kind of stubble and burning. And now there is an agreement to convert them into maize or other kinds of grains which are less water intensive. So in a way you could say government has pampered agriculture, procurement prices, huge buffer stocks. It was a politically hot potato. In order to win elections, the middlemen have benefited. You know, there are experts like Dr. Rao here who have very clear solutions to this and what to do. One of the ideas is to free up the agricultural market, let free market demand and supply work. Korean has completely reformed the milk economy in the country. There is no milk shortage in this country. We have a butter and cheese surplus coming, like Europe. We will have a problem. So if you organize cooperatives and their marketing, restructure the industry. Similarly, the Indian horticultural industry, the egg industry, the wine industry, wherever there is a market, competition, initiative, you see that things are growing and developing. Wherever there is a high level of state control and political involvement in the setting of prices and quantities, there is a huge scope for corruption. So I think wherever you see problems, the government, a democratically elected government, is answerable to multiple constituencies. There are competing dharmas. But there is a clear solution to Dharma Sankat, Dharma Shastra. You don't have to be paralyzed. Always the higher dharma has to prevail over the lower dharma. So the welfare of the consumer, the grain consumer, and removing people from agriculture into towns and employment, that is the right direction to go. So from time to time there is a regression, but I think agriculture is one of the hardest problems to solve. European agriculture, subsidies still, is a huge problem there. And that's one of the reasons Britain is exiting from the Europe, that they have to pay. Agriculture is an unsolved problem in the US. The mass of the population, huge tracts of land, unprofitability of agriculture if you don't have support prices. So I think some of these problems, we have to step into the shoes of the MP, the minister. From independent India, in the first 20 years, the agricultural ministry was known as a graveyard. Every agricultural minister failed not his personal failure. It's a government policy, multiple dharma, reconciliation failure. What Russia and China could do is to starve 10 million peasants, move them, corporatize the industry, bring in technology. We cannot do that in an elected system. So we have to resolve with these. So there is not only niti, there is a lot of nyaya, and we can advance it further. Consumers must be willing to pay. In fact, the Indian consumer today has the middle class has increased, it has spread. So government can be much more aggressive. If you read some of the articles coming out in the press, they encourage that government getting out of the agricultural market, leaving it open, and have an input strategy. For example, ITC Chopal has done more for agriculture than any government scheme. Yeah.
I just wanted to add on to that, sir, is as sir told us, as an individual or as a small group, what we can do for our rural people takes a very big leap. For example, from our institution, you must be very happy to hear that a lot of farmers' children have been learning Bharatanatyam in Arokyatanahalli and in few parts even in Madhya Pradesh. So we've had more than a few 200-300 children who have learned, and one farmer's child even did her Bharatanatyam Arangetram in a very prestigious hall. So I think efforts of individuals really goes a long way. So how many of us do visit our villages anymore? So that's important. So we can do our bit as well. So sir, before we wind up for the day, one slogan I want you to come up with, because when we visit United States, we find the US flag everywhere. When is it going to happen in India that we have a great pride in India? So can you just give us?
There's one last question there. Yeah.
Take the question now? Yeah. Thank you, sir. It was wonderful listening to you today.
Yeah.
My question is, based on your presentation, we talked about the Dharma Sankat China having with respect to Hong Kong. So are we fully justified with our, from a Dharma prism, if you look at what we are doing in Kashmir?
Well, this is a political question, but it does involve Dharma. You see, the Article 370 was formed as a temporary provision. If you go back to the history, it has been narrated several times. Nehru himself regretted creating that condition. He was advised against that article by Ambedkar and Patel. Nehru started then diluting that article for a long time. Gradually, it has been done. And the Prime Minister and the Home Minister recited in the Parliament all the reasons why 370 and 35A should be removed. And they gave the reasons, which are the Kashmiri citizens are not benefiting from the central schemes unless the State Act is passed. Kashmiri women cannot vote in the elections. So in this huge country, this one part. And in any case, Bill Clinton had agreed between Nawaz Sharif and Vajpayee at that time, in the Kargil crisis, that the line of control is the international boundary between India and Pakistan. So for all effective purposes, Kashmir is part of India. So the last act that needed to be done, I think what they've done is right. You have to look at it in a very long-term perspective. You should read Toynbee, who is the greatest world historian. And he talks about intercivilizational conflicts. He talks about Christianity and Islam, the Crusades, and how at some point of time a border was drawn beyond which Islam will not go and beyond which Christianity will not come. But he says the most dangerous and continuous inter-civilizational attack was the attack on the Hindu civilization, which went on for 1,000 years. And then the colonialists took over. So there will be bound to be a historical readjustment, realignment. This cannot be stopped. It is not taking place in the course of 1 year or 3 months or 5 years. It may take 50 years, it may take 100 years. Some reset will happen. If you read Huntington, Samuel Huntington, The Clash of Civilizations, he talks only about two civilizations, clash between Christianity and Islam. The greatest and the oldest civilization of the world is the Hindu civilization. So it is bound to reestablish its identity. And it will not be, as Mao said, it will not be a tea party. It will not be a gentle internal affair in an air-conditioned palace. So Kashmir is our issue. Government has taken an action. It has gradually started relaxing those actions. Our offices are open in Kashmir. Tourist travel, flights are arriving. The economy is up. But what the social media control has ensured is that the terrorists, the troublemakers, the stone throwers have not had access. But cellular communication is free. They can call anywhere. The UTs have been formed. The Iraqis are delighted. They've been waiting for 50 years, asking for that UT. The governors have been appointed. Things are moving. Jammu, there is no problem. So I think as and when appropriate, local elections have taken place. Central schemes, investments will take place. So I think don't be bothered about international media or some internal criticism. This is a fundamental change. It will not take place easily. Sardar Patel's integration of Indian states was a major historic event which we don't sufficiently remember and appreciate. So this will work out well, don't worry. Pakistan has tried its best. Internationally, there is no support. Everybody agrees that it is a part of India, it is an Indian internal issue. Some issues about human rights. What is happening in Kashmir is trivial compared to what's happening in Kashmir, in Hong Kong and Xinjiang. Yeah, so please stand up and speak for your government. This has to be done. There's no other way. What will you do? Independence for Kashmir for 5 million people? Will Pakistan allow it to take place? All the alternatives have been discussed thoroughly. So I think we should not allow our mind chanchal, nahi karna hai. This is done. This will work. It has to work.
Thank you so much, sir. So let's take pride in India. That's foremost, like what sir said. And more than anything, thank you, Bangalore International Center, for making this happen for all of us.